So hello everyone and welcome to Ludo History. As always, I'm Adam, and today we're going to be finishing up Ender Lilies. I do adore this lovely little Metroidvania. I think it does some lovely things with fantasy that we can learn a lot from. Basically, right, to sum up what the stream is going to talk about, I think, is that in many ways this game is very generic in its fantasy, but this is a good thing, because it means that we can identify a lot and we can apply the lessons of how this game adapts history to other purposes and to other games. And it still manages to do so in a way that is absolutely gorgeous and deeply chill despite, all the badness of the state of the world. So yeah, we're going to be going through every area and be summarizing how it does history, what makes each area unique, what things they're drawing on. If you enjoy this, the VOD will of course be on Twitch and YouTube, and if you're watching the VOD, thank you, and I hope you'll consider joining us live. Also, if you do like this, make sure you follow the stream and consider subscribing. It does help a lot to help make sure we can keep doing bigger and better things. Without further ado, let's get into it. I think we're gonna hit level 100 today. Okay, so, first thing we need to do, actually, is we need to go back to the Forbidden Domain before we start all of our process, because there is one movement level left. So we need to go over here. There is one movement ability we do not have, and we do need it to complete the rest of our stuff, so, ow. Take a random beating. And somewhere up in this room we should be. Oh god. Okay. Heal. Just run fast, be good, run fast, run away. Don't need them. Don't need them. Hey, look. A door we need to unlock. I'm sure this is going to be fine. So, we're going to face off here against the, Forbidden Champion. Ow. Don't kill me. You don't need to be like that. You don't need to be like that. Alright. Fight number 1. Done. Well, deep lore right there. Deep lore. Alright. So. Spirit. Forbidden Champion. Leap upward, shredding airborne enemies with his razor-sharp claws. Despite being blighted in battle, this former knight was able to cling to his humanity. Escaping the stockade, he headed to the Forbidden Corridor and entered Fodden's lab. Hooray! So that gives me a brand new ability, which does brand new stuff. Hooray! And now that we have that, we can return to the respite. So, let's set that up on our travel spirits. Let's see. We'll make you my mobility set, I guess. And add you to that. Okay. I believe we are ready now, so we can head back to the beginning and take a look at all the different spaces. Alright, so we're gonna do the cathedral a bit later because we are still missing a bit. we need to gather all of the broken tablet fragments in order to be able to do anything with there. So we'll do the cathedral later. We'll start the crossroads and then make our way through. So first things first, in our summary slash collectathon slash finishing up of all the places, is going to be the Cliffside Hamlet. Alright, so. First things first, the vibe that they are going for in this space is definitely one that is very ruined, right? Because in the lore of the world, obviously, bad things happened. No one had a good time. And they're like, well, heck. Everything has died horribly. But how are they actually communicating that within the historical setting of the game? Well, firstly, they're doing it by making everything here undead. But secondly, there's, I guess, two features that stand out to me as being particularly significant. The first one being the carrion birds. Right. These guys are super common in medievalist and, honestly, actual medieval literature, appearing around sites of big battles and around sites of desolation. And so the fact that they're making crows one of the first enemies you fight, alongside all these soldiers, says immediately, right, that there is a big battle that happened. As it turns out, that is, you know, absolutely correct. But it is very unfortunate for pretty much everyone. Right, very little good comes of that. And with that, you know, they're communicating this desolation that even the birds are corrupted, right? Even the remnants of the battle have themselves been corrupted and are now antagonistic. The other thing that they're doing that's interesting and that is informative for us is that they're sticking in a very strict medieval-esque fantasy. That being... Oh, need bigger. Okay. One set up, a medieval world set up with, you know, cobblestones in the walls. These, like, vague bookshelves, lots of wooden pillars, or wooden barrels, wooden stuff. Things like that. Fudden's letter. I found an interesting fragment from a stone tablet. It seems to be engraved with an ancient spell. If I can repair and decipher the tablet, I may be able to call upon its magic. Must note that casting an unknown spell may lead to irreversible consequences. I don't think I should inform the king of this, at least not until all the fragments are recovered. Thus, I think it best to leave it in your care. It's not safe here, and the other mages may catch wind of it. I'll be in touch should I learn anything new. Right. So we have this very, Alright, we'll look at those later. Some very specific aesthetics going on, right? And one that has little to do with the actual medieval world. Let's take a look at one of these buildings when we get up to the surface again as a great example. Just need to actually make our way up. Come on, let me up. Let me up. Okay. So. In short, this is not really a medieval building. I mean, it looks like it should be, right? We've got these kind of rubbish stone walls made out of rough-hewn stone, roughly mortared together. We've got wood planked walls up there. We've got, like, herbs and stuff just hanging from out on the shelves. In a lot of ways, this says, hey, you know, this wants to be medieval. But it's... And we've got red shingled roofs with wooden shingles. Realistically, though, this is... most medieval constructions are using a wattle and daub style, so with then really only urban places having lots of wooden shingles. Generally speaking, smaller towns would have, through much of the Middle Ages and early modern period, would still use thatch. So, this is instructive to us, because, well, as may be obvious, this is a fantasy world, and the core principle of fantasy that pretends it's in the Middle Ages is that it combines a lot of historical aesthetics in a way that is designed to be more evocative and emotionally affective, rather than actually historical. Yeah, these are definitely milled boards. And while that's, not unheard of in the Middle Ages, you could in fact mill and plane things. It's much more colonial Williamsburg, having us, but medieval. Right? It's back here in this background art that we really have the more stereotypical medieval town. Look at these beautiful wattle and daub buildings with the incredibly pointy roofs. All of this is what says, hey, this is medieval, right? I'm never going to stall long enough to make that work twice. No. Okay, you cannot do it twice in the air. Hello, Aelia. Hello, Agalias. Thank you for stopping in, and yes, pretty game. Pretty game with what is my favorite track in the game right now. But yeah, right, this is communicating a vague idea of medieval, rather that has a lot of stuff from, like, the 18th century. Right. 18th and 19th century romantic ideals. And, aesthetics. Cough, cough, this big lamppost. But that's okay, right? The point I want to emphasize is that that is not a bad thing. That is just a thing. And it is okay that it is just a thing. It sets the tone for us for much of the rest of the space, right? There's a lot to communicate again, later in the game that is more interesting, but the Cliffside Hamlet really just sets the mood for us, and reminds us that this is going to be a broad medievalized or medievalist fantasy, but one that does not hold itself too strictly to medieval historical references so much as creating the idea of this medieval sword and sorcery style kingdom, wherein stuff can happen. And there can be magic, and it is okay. And oh boy, is there a lot of magic to be. And so we enter the Mushroom Forest. Right, this first immediate Witch's Coven type space. The big thought I have here, because I pretty much only have like one thought per area, let's be honest. I am not that talented or clever. But the big thought I have is regarding the music. Because firstly, it is awesome, and I love it. But secondly, and probably more importantly, why did it let me get up here? There's nothing up here to get. Interesting. Aesthetics. Anyway. The point of it is largely, this music is delightful. But is instrumentally interesting. It's all MIDI stuff, so obviously there's a kind of hard limit to how relevant it can, any sort of just raw description can be in terms of historical aesthetics. But it's trying to create a sense of something vaguely spooky, right? There's no universe in which this is not at least vaguely spooky. Oh, well that was not what I wanted to do. That's alright. And I love it, right? I love this music. So, in lore, this actually used to be, a witch's coven, quite literally. And something that was actively managed as one of the big research spaces within this world. So, someone is or was actually, within relatively recent memory, maintaining this space. What instrument are these supposed to be? I feel like it's supposed to be... Oh no. I can't quite place what instrument it's supposed to be. Whatever they are, they're good. Great. But yes, which is Academia out of 12? Or out of 20? Harpsichord? Maybe there's harpsichord in here. Anyway, let's look at the rest of the aesthetics. Because we're seeing another thing that's super common. Even in the whole space that's kind of preserved or overgrown with funguses and coral and stuff, we do at least have something really interesting, and that are these columns. Right, these columns are pseudo-ionic. They're not really our classic scrolled columns. They're not our classic scrolled columns either. Right, the little lumpties on the end are clearly designed to evoke that idea. And... okay, that one's more Corinthian. As I say that, they immediately throw a different type of column at me, just to ruin my day. My day is ruined. But much of the rest of the space is not really classically inspired, though there's definitely a little bit of that around. Oh. Let's see if we can find a really good example. Well, that's a pretty good example. I don't even know what I would classify this as. Almost Islamicate, but even that, not really. Baroque? This might be Baroque. This might be super late. The point is really just, though, that clearly there is not a single unified aesthetic going on here. Not with these big heavy chains and these other spaces, and there's just a lot going on. Oh, there's a lot going on here. Oh, this is not where I want to be. Okay, bye. Nope. I didn't realize that put me there. Okay, I need to try and get down then. Whee! Luckily that can be arranged. Oh well. Rather than trying to identify the exact architectural style, because it seems to be a rather foolish endeavor right now. Let's just take a look at, I guess, what it's trying to do. Right? Because clearly the goal of the Coven, given that this isn't... we know that this is an exclusive space that very few people are allowed into, that studies magic, and has a lot of rules about what you are and are not allowed to study within that. We should pretty clearly read this as being a pseudo-academic space. Oh yeah, and these these arches are pseudo-Gothic, but they're like they're more Art Nouveau? They're like an Art Nouveau pseudo-Gothic. Which makes sense, right? A lot of very delicate design work. Focus on natural, like, the blending of human-made and natural styles that are clearly on view with the literal flowers on the column here. Stuff like that, as I think certainly relevant. But basically, right, this is a pseudo-academic space, and in that pseudo-academic space, there's quite a lot that can happen. But not necessarily a lot that has to happen, but a lot that can happen. But this exclusivity is, I think, interesting because I want to talk about magic for a bit here. In that this game does a very common thing in fantasy, wherein we have a 2.5 way split between science, magic, and religion. In that, well, there isn't a ton of religion here. In fact, the magic users and the White Priestess are actually on very good terms. Right, Dark Witch Elaine is the former White Priestess's best friend. And so, right, religion and magic are on good terms here, but methodologically, magic is far more akin to what we think of as science. Right? It uses, like, actually tries to focus on, like, rationality as something significant, and rigorous study being a tool of accomplishing stuff. And that study as something that can be controlled and has ethics attached to it. And that's just not how, like, medieval magic works. But that's okay, right? Oh, we didn't finish everything there. Well, that's bad. What did I miss here? Oh, right here. Read. Our conversations were meandering today, but I got to see Frisia, the White Priestess, smile. It's been hard watching her deteriorate more with each passing day. She asked me if I could help make an amulet out of her broken magic stone. That alone made today a joyous occasion. Maybe I'll bring some comfort to her after all. But yeah. Right, in the actual historical, really broadly European past, there is not a distinction at all between magic, religion, and science. Right? Those are the same thing. Sort of. There are nuances here in that, for the most part, medieval magic is extra. Is done by highly educated people who may be clerics, but nominally has like the control of demonic forces as a significant part of that whole shtick. So, right, I guess not non-religious, but rather in some ways an almost anti-deific approach to magic, which is definitely interesting. But right, this fantasy broadly, and this game in particular, set up a much more specific dichotomy. Right, there is secular study into disease, epidemiology, etc., which can get wrapped up in magic, and then those are something completely distinct from religion. And this feels to me like a D&Dism, right? Basically, right, the separation of arcane magic and divine magic into two totally separate things, and arcane magic as something that is done through study and university training and schools of magic, and that there is a really precise aspect of academia attached to arcane magic that is just not true in divine magic. In some ways I feel like that's supposed to be older than D&D, but I also can't really pin that down because usually, very usually, the predecessor to D&D is Lord of the Rings. But Lord of the Rings very much does not do that. Remember, every magic user in Lord of the Rings is explicitly an angel. So, that's not it. That ain't it at all. So, yeah. How to pin that down is, or I still haven't totally managed to pin down where this separation comes in, but something we at least see loosely in this game. A little bit less, they blur the lines a little bit more than a lot of other fantasy does, but you still get relics of it with like the, oh yeah, all the magic users live in a coven in a specific place that is isolated from others and does specific stuff. Not necessarily unwelcome, but definitely notable. Hello, my name is you. Welcome. And with that, let's move on to the catacombs. Now, the catacombs continue to insist that they have something in here, and I still do not know where it is. So, catacombs... Oh, come on. No, no, no. Okay, so I can't do things out of that, so jump, 1, 2, Y. Yep, can't do that. 1, silver, silver, 2, silver, silver, dash, silver, silver, wall. Ah. Okay, nope. One more try. 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. Have to dash there, not do the thing. Jump, 1, 2, jump, 1, 2, dash, 1, 2, up. Nope. What am I missing? I'm missing it there. I think. Nope. Evidently not. Well, return to respite it is. My knowledge of European magic is mostly early modern. Isn't there a subset of magical practices focused on natural wonders, which argues it isn't magic while still using astrology and sympathetic magic alongside perfectly mundane life hacks? Oh yeah, absolutely. They insist that they are not dealing with demonic forces and therefore are not magic. Richard Keycaver is the person to read on this. But yes, natural magic, or the study of mirabilia, wonders, is absolutely a thing. But in practical terms, right, there is also a relatively concerted Oh, come on. Uh... A relatively concerted effort, in the early modern period to, legitimize natural philosophy in a way that does not exist. Okay, that worked. 1, 2, 1, 2. I made it up here and I don't know what to do with it now. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Wild. So what am I, literally what am I missing? Why are you still blue? You have no reason to be blue. I cannot find anything that you did, that I am missing here. Oh well. We aren't going to clear the whole thing. But right. The early modern thing, is very much elite people wanting to legitimize themselves in a way that medieval people did not try and legitimize that study. Because of course magic only becomes a big thing that starts to get codified in the 15th century. Before then, witches are just said to not exist. Like, Aquinas straight up says there are no witches, what are you talking about? You are crazy. Well, I'm gonna need to start playing a bit better than that, I think. I mean, no... Paracelsus is early modern. Nevertheless, I don't entirely agree with you there. Right, or sorry, my name is you, I don't agree with you there. The idea of magic as unnatural is a weird and very monotheistic thing. Because it's not, strictly speaking, just that they're... Oh boy. This is gonna get interesting. Well, that was very badly played. But right, there of course was a good magic and bad magic that, even in the Middle Ages, and so right, and it's a very cross-culturally familiar thing that there is socially acceptable magical practice and, you know, not that. Good lord, this thing is rolling me. Good lord, I just got absolutely dumpstered. Okay. Okay. I see how it is. But yeah, right, so the statement of, right, basically that there is acceptable magic and unacceptable magic, or acceptable supernatural practice and unacceptable supernatural practice, is not exactly uncommon, on a very cross-cultural level. I think we should see medieval Christian magic as existing in the same spectrum. Ow. Spikes. Damn it. Dang it. Is the boss of this area an angry beehive? It sure looks like it, doesn't it? It's basically a... Right, so there's actually two enemies in the area. There is the guy who is spitting nonsense at me, and then there is a spawner for all the stupid flies. And together they are extremely rude. We'll just call them extremely rude. And be done with that. Boom. That's okay. We will beat him eventually. I just need to be a bit better and a little bit less... A little bit less afraid. Spiked. Basically, don't be a coward, right? The solution is, I think, just don't be a coward. Use Gerada more, and I'll be fine. Hey. Ow. Heal off of that. Should have plenty of oomph to outlast. Heal off of that. Kill them. Kill these guys this turn. Ow. Go away. Go away. Turns out using my heaviest hitter is in fact a good strategy. Hey look, there you are. You suck. Go away. You suck, go away. Go away. Go away. Thank you. Hello, Karabachi. I appreciate the lurking. Also, thank you, Twitch, for letting me know like 15 hours, or letting people know literally 45 minutes into the stream that we had started streaming. Real cool of you. Real cool of you. So, now that we've done that, touched briefly on magic and magic-adjacent nonsense, this area is curious. Right, because this is our obligatory catacombs level, and obligatory catacombs levels universally suck. Not as much as poison swamps, but that is a low bar to clear. But I don't really know what to make of right in the center of the screen here. I don't know how well you all can see it. I don't really know what to make about this whole, like, swirly, like, trait. Strikes me as, like, non-European tracery pattern. An aesthetic that's been dominantly medieval European. That's potentially weird. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I don't recognize it. So, don't worry too much about it. Okay, this definitely feels like I should be able to, like, chonk through there. There's clearly a room below me. They don't usually do that if they don't think I'm going to be able to make it. But I can't drop through here, so maybe it's just for aesthetics. 'Tis a mystery. Oh well. Catacombs. Catacombs are another thing that are so dominantly part of our imagined Middle Ages, despite being honestly relatively dubious as part of our historical ones. Like, they're simply aren't very many catacombs until like the 14th century. And a lot of our famous catacombs are even later than that, right? Like, I think the one that should come to everyone's mind with good reason is the Paris catacombs. Those are clearly the closest reference to the sheer quantity, the scope and quantity of these twisting things underneath a city. Alright, there are catacombs a little bit earlier than that in like Spain. There are like monastic catacombs, but we don't really see those big ones. But yeah, stylistically though, I think these are intended to be like an older area. Sorry, friends. I need through here. Okay, so that... Oh, there. Okay. Okay, found it. Right, let's look at this. Let's look at why I would say that these are an older area. So, firstly, in many ways these actually still look pretty Gothic, right? Gothic being a very broad name for architectural styles that focus on height and therefore kind of bright, airy spaces with long, extravagant barrel vaulting as a relevant thing. And right, we still see these slightly pointy arches. So these slightly pointy arches are probably indicative of implied barrel vaulting inside this whole space, and therefore suggest kind of a proto-Gothic as the most likely thing. It's very early though, right? There's none of the decorative elements that we expect from later Gothic. And given that it's all underground, it really keeps things at a very basic level. But the other thing that makes me think this is... there are two other things that make me think that this is meant to be early, and that this refers mostly to earlier material as its dominant aesthetic influence. First one is the color palette, actually. Right, this color palette has a lot of browns and oranges in it. Right, where the color palette of like the Cliffside Hamlet was pretty much entirely... and actually I'd say pretty much exclusively based in like blues, these really, yeah, mostly blue, and implying a very dark stone aspect to it. Here we actually get a much bolder warmer color palette, and that warmer color palette seems to me to indicate, well, more, I guess the blunt way of putting it is more like desert stone. Right? Like, it implies the color palette of what we think of as ancient Egypt. To put it a little bit, potentially a little bit too bluntly. which is just interesting. Right, they say, oh yeah, this place is old due to primarily like saying, oh yeah, look at all these color palettes of Warmstone doing yeah, kind of this warm sandstone-y color and simpler design being older. That's very, like, popular understanding of history right there. Meanwhile, also, lots of death. Lots and lots of dead people. That's another way of implying age in fantasy, right? The more dead people something has, the older something is. One of our ranks made it out here? Powerful residues shed from an ancient people unlike those of the kingdom. Allows for the Umbral Knight's skills to be enhanced at respites. It's funky, right? The thought was not totally coherent, but right, you get it, right? Age implies or quantity of bones implies more generations of people, implies like older. Obviously not a super sound way to imagine anything or everything, but yeah, so be it. Huh. I don't know what to make of these, like, old pedestal spaces. There's a lot about this area that seems to be drawing... has so many layers of adapting other fantasy aesthetics that it's hard to pin down what thing they're drawing on. And that's okay. Before we fast travel, I do want to talk about the... Oh, first thing I want to do this. Hooray. He's finally gotten good. Unless it's some big tragedy is mentioned with all the dead people. Good addendum, this dude. Anyway, the statuary here, I think, also helps contribute to the old... Like, look. I have a cursor. Y'all can barely see it underneath here, but we've seen a few of them. Let me actually go stand where I can actually see one then. Right here. They are... Well... Realistically, their actual content is very medieval Euro, right? We've got a figure, hands clasped in prayer, presumably, looks at least very vaguely coded female, so presumably a white priestess, wearing a nun's, well, calling it a wimple is probably too much, but certainly, right, the same headdress as you can see on, like, Silva, right, below her, right? These two headdresses are clearly related. But this very kind of static pose ends up looking like it is supposed to be old. Right, it's not the big, more active statuary you see elsewhere in the game, and not the stuff you expect from either, right, high-class classical art or kind of late medieval, early modern statuary, where we start getting a lot of active posing. Instead, it's like this carved sandstone that, despite not actually being in any way, shape, or form Egyptian, it still gives off those vibes to me. So yet another way in which that these catacombs, I think, are supposed to be read as old. and some way significant in that oldness. Also, modern bookshelves. Look at how modern those bookshelves are. They're great. Big fans. And the other thing here is, where is the next? Hey look, there you are. Furious Blight. Thank you. Whee! Don't you love all the random stuff here that color coding gives us? And the thing is, right, it's really wild because the majority of, like, the significance basically is done by just color coding. Which is bonkers. Like, that's frankly actually kind of crazy that that is the main way that they're making this place feel distinct is something as simple as what color are they using? And what does that color tell us? Because Lord knows it's not strictly through... Ow. Not strictly through any meaningful architectural differences. But hey, you know, that's something itself illustrative, that you can get a lot out of just using different colors. And if the point is to evoke historical settings, like, clever use of color is a good way to do that. Rather than, you know, having a totally new set of art styles based on hours and hours of research. Sometimes don't overthink it. And sometimes have barbed wire. What the heck? Alright, chat, I just got confused. Y'all agree that that's World War I barbed wire, right? I mean... I guess might be rose vines, but that's gray with, like, blood red on it. Okay, chat's all saying rose thorns. I strenuously disagree. Let me zoom in. Oh, let me scuff the whole stream. The reason I disagree is that rose thorns don't usually go on both sides of the wire. And you can very clearly see that every single one of these stretches on both sides as if they're twisted around. Additionally, there's been very little indicating flower life in this entire area. Right, there's been very little that says, hey, this is, there's a significant plant life here for roses to be growing. Right, there are some things that are plant life, tree roots and the like, but nothing here that says rose. Alright, I have persuaded chat. It is barbed wire for sure. Let's go. You weren't expecting the barbed wire, therefore you didn't notice the barbed wire. And that's lesson number 2 to take away. The big thing that, as a historian, right, when I'm playing through a game in one of these historical playthroughs, the big thing I'm keeping an eye on is making sure that I am not listening to what I expect to be true. Right? Because you can, obviously, with some success, just go, hey, these are what I'm going into this place expecting. That's not an invalid strategy by any metric. In fact, that's what most people are going for, right? You collect fancy tropes, and you see those tropes, and you get expectations as to what you're going to see coming off of them as a result. That's totally fine. That's not an issue. And then sometimes games will surprise you, so don't get attached to those expectations. Because otherwise you're gonna try and reinterpret weird things, and things are therefore suggestive. Because weird things are always suggestive of adaptational decisions being made. And in this case it may be as simple as they liked the asset on the Unity store, right? There's a lot of explanations that are not a rigorous historical argument being made here. But if you're not paying attention to be willing to observe what is actually going on, you are going to miss things. Or interpret things in a way other than what the evidence actually points towards. So, it's pretty neat. I love when games do weird things like that, though. Right? That's one of the things I love about playing not technically historical games. Right? Even though they're totally historical. There's not a lot of universes where you can look at this and go, hey, there's no historical imagery going on here. Because obviously there is. Yeah, it's a fancy world, but, that doesn't stop anyone ever. Yeah, oh yeah, Aglaeus. There is absolutely an ancient civilization here. In fact, our little sword boy here is the, as far as we know, last surviving member. Well, actually, no, second to last surviving member of said ancient civilization. The other one being Lily. Right, the white priestesses are members of said ancient advanced civilization. Heck. Well, at least this is all the same room. That's fine. Oh, hey, look. We wanted medieval Gothic, by the way. Medieval spooky Gothic. Right there. Right there. Perfect. 10 out of 10. No notes. We've got 4 angel statues, one of which has been beheaded, in Gothic-style arches, in this little vestibule that has an altar made out of dead people. Spooky Gothic. Now we're back on vibe. And I think as we're getting farther up in these catacombs, right, I mean, this is much more explicit in being, first and foremost, medievalist. And that is okay. I am not offended by that at all. I am also not offended, even though this is not at all Gothic. I am genuinely not bothered by the game having the same area have multiple aesthetics and different layers. Is it bad you want the Grim Reaper to show up and start playing the violin? No, I think that's good. I think that would be excellent taste. Sometime before the latest apocalypse, somebody had 18... Oh, no. Right, as I said, Agalias, right, it's hard to actually read anything meaningful into barbed wire, in this particular case. Because realistically, what I think the barbed wire is, given that it's just a throwaway in a corner, is that they thought it looked good on the Unity store, and so they just happened to use the asset. And the point of using it is basically just to occupy space so that there is art in the foreground. Right? Because that's something stylistically this game loves to do, is just have art hanging out in the foreground. Oh dear. A storytime redemption. Well. Exactly, right? It is forbidding and kind of cool, and sometimes it doesn't need to be more than that. Well, Kurabashi, so we will honor that, though that was my bad for not deleting that, because that was designed for the Scavma stream, but nevertheless, we will... Story time. So, no folk stories this time, because I don't have any pulled up, and certainly none that are relevant to Catacombs. But... what we can instead do... is tell a historical story about, you know, some of the use of all of these spaces. Let's see. While I sit and think for a second, so I think I've cleared out that area. Stockade should be next. Yeah, let's do this. So, let's go into another area that is the very definition of dark and spooky. And so, you know, our story is going to, of course, be about all these torture implements. Right, I don't actually have any great stories about the Paris catacombs, because I don't know a lot about them. Because turns out they are several centuries after the part I care about. Ow. Jerk. I forgot how much this place sucks. But... well, that whole thing went poorly. This is going not great, chat. I'll be honest, I've gotten a bit out of control here. But a lot of the torture devices we'll see in this area, right, hanging cages, etc., are actually a nice quality bit of fantasy, so we'll use this as our sort of story. Right, I don't have all of the details here memorized, but right, for the most part, there's this fascination in Victorian England with the idea of sort of justifying the medieval past to being kind of the worst. Right? It's something that I actually have to put a lot of effort into justifying, because it turns out is not actually supported. And so you get this lovely craze that is honestly really fascinating in Victorian England about all of these different, like, medieval torture devices. And so, like, there's this massive cottage industry, basically, around just, right, the Iron Maiden and other such nonsense. And all these hanging spiked cages and other horrible news, being just this really important thing. And it's just, none of it's real. Right. And so, right, the spiked cages we are seeing, or the cages we're seeing in here, are actually even barely real. Like, there just isn't a lot of grounding for the idea this game has of, you know, oh yeah, let's put people in cages. That being said, right, obviously prisons did exist in the Middle Ages. But the important thing about prisons in the Middle Ages is that they're used as elite prisons, right? Poor people don't stay in, yeah, right? Poor people don't actually go to jail. There's no point in holding on to someone in jail if you don't get something out of them. And so, by and large, you actually see a lot of efforts to seek other punishments, other types of penance, fines, outlawry, etc. Things to make them somebody else's problem, rather than things that actually, like, trap people in jail. Now, if you're elite, you might end up in jail for a very long time, especially if your name is Thomas Mallory. One of our lead sources for modern Arthurian everything. Well, in fact, did get stuck in jail for much of his life for being just that bad of a dude. Genuinely abysmal person. No one liked him. It was sad. So yeah, a bit of a tangent rather than a folk story. I unfortunately don't have any good stories about the Paris catacombs because I've never been to them. I almost got to go to catacombs once. I was in Spain when I went to Granada. Right, there's a monastery just outside of Granada that has catacombs that are open every Sunday after Mass. Which is real fun. And so I was like gonna walk up the 3 miles out of town to actually go over there and see what those catacombs were all about. And then my bus, they were like, no, the bus leaves at noon. Please don't miss the bus because you're going to catacombs. Please don't be that way. To which I responded, but, it's me. What did you really expect? And they were like, no, you still can't. And so I didn't. And I'm still sad about it. Someday. Oh boy. How on earth? Can I actually make it across here? That is a no. That is also a no. Excuse me? How? How am I supposed to get across this? So yeah, I mean, that's hardly an impressive story, Karabachi, but that's kind of the best I got. Meanwhile, let's take a look at this stockade now. Okay, but real talk. Are the cages riffing in early modern gibbets? Yep, they sure are. Because of course the Victorians looked at early modern gibbets and were like, oh yeah, you know, hey look, all these dead people? Well, what if the living people were held there instead? Dun dun dun. Da da da. To which everyone else is like, what? It's so close. God, it's so close. Okay. And also, the ever-important Hail Hydrate. Okay, chat, this one's actually going to annoy me because there's nothing I love more than environmental puzzle. Let's see. More to the upper right? Okay. So I am doing it right. I just am mistiming it. Hysterical. Hey, it worked. Turns out if I just complain enough, it'll actually work. And that was immediately worth it. Holy moly. Oh, good lord, and this room still isn't done? How much is in this room? How many things did I miss? Don't answer that. There is... I just straight up missed this bit. Alright, now this room's done. Thank goodness. Sheesh. Sheesh. Okay, so that's done, that room's done, that room's done. Do. Should be this room? Yeah, this room is not done. Hey, look. Turns out once you have wall climb, there's a lot of secrets. If that was just all of that for 10. All of that for 10. Incredible. So much strife for so little reward. Okay, and there's like a thing yet missing in this, apparently. Love this from you. Oh hey look, it's a Julius. Oh dear. There we go. More stagnant blight. I feel so good about this. Alright, let's actually look at the stockade here. The stockade went back to, right, the catacombs were kind of weird because of that orangey thing that gives them that, what I would propose is an intention of feeling old. The stockade has gone right back to full-on dark blue gothic vibes. Even though, you know, I would not actually... Oh god. This is bad. Alright, we're good. Yeah, even though I would not necessarily say that this place is actually gothic, it definitely is a design that it's, like, trying to look gothic. As a matter of fact, I absolutely would not call this place gothic. I think that would be an extreme... rather extreme miss on its design. Oh, heck. Well. That was interesting. Yeah. Dang it, I thought there was floor there. Boo. Let me land where there is floor. Look up. Okay, there's a very slight point to these arches, which is kind of the classic indicator. For the most part, these are not Gothic. Right? Those are not Gothic arches. Which is funny, because the color palette screams Gothic, and a lot of the rest of it actually screams Victorian Gothic. Right, look at the Fascination of Skulls here. Right, puts us in a late medievalist, very Lord of the Rings fantasy sword boys on the statuaries here, etc. And sewage. Sewage leaking out of big pipes. Ow. Looming hooded statuaries. Lord of the Rings sword boys, I'm telling you. But yeah, broadly speaking, I think the thing that's trying to evoke most of all is just, hey look, this is a prison. This is a prison. Hey look, this prison is a prison. Even when there's a bench here. Right, there's a dude suspended from pipes up top. There's manacles hanging from the walls. There's a gibbet to hang the dead. And there's all these little tiny rooms of cells. Right, this thing is the most prisony prison one could possibly get. Which is great, because guess how it's being used? In the lore of this game, this is in fact a prison. This is where all the blighted get sent as part of a containment strategy. So criminalization of disease, we love to see it. Hello? No? Chain of sorcery, please. Yay. But yeah, right. The historical influence from a time period here is definitely mostly not medieval. It is Victorian. Because, as I mentioned, the Victorians were projecting really hard. And so, we're like, hey, what if medieval people were as trigger-happy with prisons and as brutal in their tortures as we were? Right? That makes us look good in comparison. We promise. Totally. Spoiler alert, no it does not. Nothing, in fact, makes them look good in comparison. Damn sinners, you'll pay for all of this. Uh-huh. Sinners being diseased people, because we love nothing more than the stigmatization of disease, even fancy disease that makes you mindlessly reckless. Hello, I have fleas. I am doing well, thank you. We are trying to do a summary of this area, or of this game, and every level in it while we are cleaning up, which is very fun, but also, I will have to say, I am having my usual struggles of being bad at words. So, you know. There is a lot of rambling and getting easily distracted by all of the shiny stuff going on. God, the fact that it is also just like a sewer, and it's where all the sewers are, is so funny. Just 10 out of 10. You really make it unsubtle. Right, you can't honestly say that there's any subtlety here in the historical references being mostly tied to Victorian literature, i.e., you know, the place that has significant problems with, or Victorian literature, the Victorian period, the time period with the most significant issues with regard to just leaking sewage everywhere. Also, literally a guillotine. Also, just, you know, literally a guillotine. This is the thing dark fantasy loves to do, is freely blend the worst things and assign them to the medieval. Like, they just freaking love to do that. Increases spirit uses. Hooray! Efficiency in executions. Because that's totally what we wanted, was efficiency in executions. Also, look at all the skill imagery. Very modern, right? Even more so than the Memento Mori tradition in the Middle Ages. That is what we call modern. Hey look, an ancient soul. Imprisoned here since becoming one of the blighted, no doubt. Hey look, stored in a gibbet where they cannot escape and cause harm, until they inevitably escape and cause harm. And Arachnius Barda, just now, thank you for the follow. Welcome. I'm curious where you found us from. And we're happy to have you regardless. If you just want to lurk, you're welcome to. But if you want to say hi, feel free to as well. Because I do want this, you know, great reminder to everyone here, whether you're a first-time viewer or a long-time viewer. I do want this to be informative, but also entertaining. And if I am going over people's heads and saying, right, words that you don't actually understand, or referencing things you don't recognize, or any of that jazz, like, please do say something so that I can make sure this continues to be good. Up, farther up, and down. Yep, I am happy to explain, though since I am not always in control of what words come out of my mouth, I will not promise that I will, I may go, why did I say that? That makes no sense. In which case, something useful will have still be learned. Namely, that I should not be trusted with the power of a stream. That still is something, right? Anyway. Hey, wait. You know what I was saying about more actively post statuary? Let me kill all these rats and then let's go back, let's take a look at this statue. Alright, I have killed all the rats. So this further emphasizes what to me was already pretty clear, right? The fact that the primary aesthetic from this, even though it's in a medievalist coat of just vibe, is modern, right? This would look to me like either depictions of Columbia, from the basically, right, Greek goddess of the United States of America, who is the patron of manifest destiny and mindless expansionism towards glory and other stuff. The other option, though, is French Revolution, right? Something we've already seen references to, obliquely with the guillotine a little bit ago, right? If France was holding, or if this goddess figure was holding the French flag, well, looking up, right, the spirit of liberty, or something, some such, right? That's very enter feminine personification guiding something. Exactly. And I expect her to be holding something that has since been lost with that posing. But in either case, it's all very, very neoclassical. Namely, right, late 18th through 19th century revivalist ideas of classical sculpture. And so you have that very finely carved things. Oh, great. You lurked on the last Under Lily stream and now you're joining us? Well, welcome to have you. And also, yeah, is that bronze? It might be bronze. It's totally bronze. You're right, Agalias. Right, obviously there's a blue filter over everything that makes it difficult, but it does look like the green of bronze, so, reminiscent itself of the Statue of Liberty. And standing just incredibly starkly in contrast to the other statuary we see here, right, the foreboding Lord of the Rings dramatic hooded figures. Incredible. I'm glad you enjoyed my rambling about how Japan loves its gratuitous German. Look, on the Discord server, we have been, we have had one so far, sad watch through of Fate's Day Night, and we do love our gratuitous German in Fate's Day Night. Oh, that was not where I wanted to go. Go back down. Where am I missing something here? I'm clearly missing something here. I do not know where the something I'm... Oh, look at how pretty it is. God, I love this. I love how pretty this game is. Even though... Right, obviously... super dark and foreboding, but also... the color. The use of color in this scene is gorgeous. Actually, through this whole area, something we've actually seen a lot of. Something we've actually seen a lot of in the Stockade is a lot more green life, which is an interesting counterbalance, I think, to the right super dead words. I lost track of that thought halfway through. The super desolate, grim, foreboding Victorian prison space. Having all of that tempered by an enormous quantity of green space is actually really cool. I think that does a lot to make the place feel navigable. Right on, it's not really something that has a lot of or that necessarily has a lot of historical oomph around it. But right, the idea that the place has been abandoned, and even in the desolation, right, that there is new life coming up. Super nice. Ow. Ow. Is Sword Guy statue just medieval sarcophagus lid night, but upright? Not quite. definitely similar. I think the big difference is that instead of there being a, is that he's got a hood instead of a, like, male coif. Right, so instead of that, like, chainmail, the little chainmail hood that is very distinctive of, like, 12th century sarcophagus lid knights, you instead have what is extremely clearly a, like, pointed hood. Does one of these actually work? That would be nice. I love one of these actually works and I wasn't stuck. I know one of these is trapped. Yeah. There we go. So close. Nay. Oh, it was so close. Come on. Jump, jump. Jump, jump. Jump, jump. Darn it. How on earth am I supposed to get over here? Because this one pulls one down this way. Well, maybe I can do it this way. What? Oh, that's cheap. I had that. Boo. Wait, that still wasn't all of it? Oh. Heck. What else is down here? Or what else is up here? What else is up here? Woohoo! There we go. Does that clear out the stockade? That does clear out the stockade. Fantastic. So I think we talked about our prison enough. Alright, really good historically super weird design. But insofar as it is a evocative design, it definitely is, and has a lot of juicy lore implications about, you know, pretenses towards freedom versus pretenses for other nonsense. The kingdom's lack of care for the blighted, and their portrayal of them as morally iniquitous by virtue of being sick, etc. Right, there's a lot of juice there. It's just like good on it. Really just good on it for leaning into that, because I think it is, you know, better for it. It's just generally better when we can lean into those a little bit more and explore them. and understand the fact that this whole tortured world, right, this whole policy just like straight up didn't work. And it's not working is a super significant thing. Hastens the prayer, slightly lets us run faster, increases the SP gauge. Ring of the Ancients. Can I get a different ring? Like one that ups spirit uses? That slightly increases. There it is, Aura's ring. Priestess Aura kills with a barrage of blight. Huh. Okay. What else can we do with this? Let's put on this one, I guess? Yeah, let's do that. Fast travel. Alright, next area. Execution Grounds, no. Land's End, no. Forbidden Domain, no. I think it's the castle next, right? Castle next. So, we're going from a very Victorian, from one very Victorian era to a very different Victorian era. Right. Much of this space, honestly, is so interesting, because of how, like, visually dense this whole area is. There's a lot going on here. Look at this, like, literal mountain of books. Literal walls of books. Which is great. Ow. Like, on principle, I am a fan of this, because how could I not be a fan of this? Even though the books are in rough shape by virtue of, you know, all of the murder, and all of the blight growing around it, you still end up feeling real good about this. Because of course you do. Of course you feel good about this. Well, why would you not feel good about this? So many books. Realistically, right, no castle space has this many books. Not in any historical time period. King the First Age's Diary. The battle was long, but we have emerged victorious. Our attempts to find a way for our people to coexist bore no fruit in the end. The land will be divided into 6 nations. I will rule the land of the end. The land foisted on me is said to be called Al'Yr, and some remnants of the ancients still remain. There will be much hardship ahead, but as king, I must remain strong. You wonder if they have the Twilight Trilogy. You know, I suppose if the option is that or have 500 copies of Boethius, I don't know which one I would prefer. Stone Tablet Fragment. We're going to look at the last Stone Tablet Fragment in more detail. Right, when we get back to the Forbidden Domain and take a look at it, we will take a look at that one in more detail. Is there anything else I need to do here? I don't think there's anything else I must do here. There's a couple things like, let's just bum around, like we'll go clear out that other room, just because we can. Ow. I was almost able to outdamage him. But yeah. Right? Something I said last time we saw this, that I very much stand by, is that this castle is not a castle, this castle is a church. And it's not hard to, like, see why I say that. Literally a rose window. Rose windows are characteristic of later Gothic styles. Right, embellished Gothic, or I can never remember, like, the fancy name for the super high Gothic of, like, Notre Dame. But right, at the same time, the, like, tracery, those little super notable embellished, spire styles show up. Sorry. I lost track of my words there. The same time that those super, stylish, familiar, spires show up, those little short ones on, like, the corner of every building. That's about when rose windows enter the Gothic. And realistically, that's how we should understand this space, is that this space is just peak Gothic. And so you get these super duper pointy things, you get really high, no, come back here. Hello, Blues. Welcome. I'm talking about how Gothic this space is, and not doing a particularly good job on it. Ow. 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 Okay, my name is Ian. See ya. Okay, anyway. Yeah. Gothicness. Right, it strikes me that it is, extremely Victorian for this space to go, hey, you know, how can we be the most Gothic possible? And answer that question by going, let's just be a church. Right, that is extremely Victorian of it. There's nothing there to land on. Okay. God, I still cannot figure out where the heck this other shiny is. This is one of the rooms that annoys me. Ow. Ow. Because I genuinely don't know where the shiny is. I got that shiny. There's no other shiny up here. No other shinies down here. Anyway. Gothicness. Before I get totally distracted by the power of shiny objects. Yo. Let's see. Yeah, the fact that I can't make that jump is frustrating. It feels like there's supposed to be something here that there isn't. Oh well. Let me move on and try and put a coherent thought together. Because I was stalling for time, but then also forgot what I was going to say anyway. So that didn't work. So. The, super duper, Gothic vibe of this whole space, works primarily, I think, there's supposed to be something here that I'm supposed to do. I thought it was in this space. Huh? Oh no, it's in the next one. Okay. Never mind. I should head back this way. But... Oh, we can see it all really clearly back here. Oh, look at that. This is super helpful. As we get out here, we can see, right, these kind of fake crenellations all over the back of here. We have gargoyle enemies in and around here, like this guy. And in the background, we've got those super duper high gothic castle styles. Right, look at the super ridiculously slanted roof. The round tower there. The square tower over here being a slightly different style, but still super gothic. And so, right, the background art is indicative here, where they clearly have some awareness of, you know, what castle gothic looks like. And then their response is to say, yeah, but that's fine, that's not dramatic enough. And so instead combine this, a gothic castle, with a gothic church. And oh, I'd also hate to shingle those roofs. The styling is incredibly exaggerated. But the interesting thing that they're doing is that, right, to them, gothic still very much means, right, dark. As in the Cliffside Hamlet, we have this big focus on kind of blue as the primary color. And so red becomes this really cool accent color that looks gorgeous. Just looks beautiful. But right is all characterized by super dark colors and decrepitness, instead of every surface possible being hung with brighter things than this, or painted, or lit up with stained glass. Depending on whether you're in a castle or a church, obviously affects which one that is. But right, if you looked at that rose window, let's go back to the rose window. The... I overshot. Boo. Alright, we'll go out, we'll go back and down here. Ow. I got stuck in the combat room. I hate this. Am I in the wrong spot? I am totally in the wrong spot. One room up. The point is, right, the rose window is not colored. Which, like, literally why? Like... Okay, now I've lost it. This is annoying. But you all saw it, right? None of these windows are colored. And that is extremely silly. Yeah, here it is. I am in the right room, I'm just... Okay, actually, no. I'll revise that. It is very slightly colored. This only partially solves the problem. Right, so there is color here. It just doesn't shed any color onto the ground below it. Right, you can see it's got red and blue and green in there, which is good. But it doesn't shed any of that light down below to help emphasize anything that's going on. It's so faint that you almost don't even notice that it is colored at all. And that is, regrettably, super Victorian. Right, by the 1800s, between the paint flaking off and the covering of some of the most famous Gothic churches in England with coal soot, as you just mentioned, Agolias, the Victorian Gothic imagination is of churches and Gothic castles being incredibly dark spaces, and dark, therefore, becoming spooky, rather than the original design of them, which is the point that they're supposed to be as bright as possible. It's actually really important to them that they are bright. That is what the design is supposed to do. So, this is like a perfect example of the ways in which Victorian and medieval Gothic ideas blend together really effectively in fantasy. Which is extremely neat. It is just generally actually quite neat, and I am quite happy about it. Right? That may be surprising, but I do love when things are, I do love the tropes sometimes. Like, they're not historical per se, but I don't think they're necessarily, or rather, I know they're not trying to be, and so seeing things get commented on and remediated is actually really, really nice. I'm not going to be mad about that. Especially when it's packaged up so prettily. Right, when they understand how to make this pretty instead of frustrating, like, there's nothing that makes me sad about it here. Good vibes only. And now twin... fucking... the really scary area. Incredible music in this bit. Right. I want to be very clear. The music in this is incredible. Twin Spires has one of my favorite tracks in the game, which I say about almost every track, but that's fine. But does a couple of other interesting things in terms of trying to be distinct from the other castle. Because Twin Spires is another castle, and so it has this challenge of it needs to be distinct from the other castle. So it does that in two ways. Way one is by being a lot more claustrophobic and vertical. And way two is that, broadly speaking, despite the similar enemies and a lot of things that should make them comparable, they make the brilliant choice of, like, really zoning in on, hey, cold and snow and claustrophobic style level design as being the most important thing. So instead of having those really open high Gothic spaces, you end up with a lot of really tight spaces with really tight elevators, which is just really, really clever as a way to solve this issue. Even this one, right? This is like one of the biggest open rooms, and it's a safe spot, right? It opens up to make this spot feel safe. And makes the whole thing just, despite still being gorgeously designed, and in a way that's honestly very, almost Art Nouveau, right? It doesn't strike me as like medieval column designs. It strikes me as very modern. It still says, hey, you know, we've got this really austere, claustrophobic thing here. What is fundamentally, like, not Gothic. Like, none of this is medieval Gothic. It's just its own peculiar brand of unpleasant. And also has dragons. Here, there be dragons. But the other thing that it does have, that is, I think, notable, is that it's got Vikings. Right? Dudes with horned helmets. Right. Dudes with horned helmets and axes are 100% of the time Vikings. And so, guess what? We've got Vikings. Right, so this is, I think, a remnant of, you know, Land's End is described as being really cold and snowy all the time. and so, like, broadly speaking, unpleasant. And so the solution is make it super duper 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 snowy, and since it's snowy, it's gonna have Vikings. I was never allowed a shred of human dignity. Thought he might acknowledge my presence, my strength. No, it wasn't enough I pulled myself up from the depths of hell to get here. He only ever had eyes for himself, and now he's trying to take everything from me once again. Won't let that happen. I'm going to take it all back. Well, Sag. But yeah. Right, if we look back here, I think this is supposed to actually be the royal castle, right, in the background. And so you see that super, like, comically gothic, spired fantasy tower going on. Oh, forgot. Wait, I made it. Heck, I didn't make it. Let's try that again. This time with more oomph. I wonder what I missed up here. Forgot the writing. That just goes over here. Anyway. Right. I didn't finish that thought very well. I've spoken about this before, though, so it's not like it's... It should be relatively familiar. It's a phenomenon called Snow Viking, that I call Snow Vikings. Right? Literally anytime you have a snowy environment in media, there's a reasonable chance that you are going to get Vikings. Because it's like those two are inextricably linked, even though there isn't actually that much grounds to link them. It's just, it's part of what you do. Really. This entire big wall, and there's not a single secret in it. Sad. Okay. Be that way, I guess. But yeah. Right. I think that covers at least most of what I wanted to say about the Twin Spires. Right, it's pretty much just Snow Vikings. Snow Vikings are far and away the most significant thing I have to say about it, because as it turns out, that is an intensely significant thing. Oh heck. Heck. Okay, well, I got the tablet fragment, and that should be all I need from that, so let's make our way back down. Safely, question mark? We'll try going up the other wall first. Since we've got the oomph and the spirit uses, let's see what's up. Oh, I can't, there's no way I make it up that wall. Okay. Fine. Fine. Exactly. It's not the fact that the historical Norse didn't mind the heat at all. More to the point, Angelias, despite the fact that most of the Norse world was just not particularly snowy. Like, if we're honest, what about Denmark screams the land of snow and ice and cold and nonsense? It's Denmark. there simply isn't actually that much super spooky about it. It's flat, and it's green, and that's about all there is going for it. Oh no. But yeah, right, cold requires Vikings. Those two things are functionally inextricable in fantasy. Well, thanks, I think, in part to our good friends, the Victorians, but not exclusively them. Tracing this is actually really hard. Right, there's some elements of it kind of as early as the 18th or as the early 1800s. And it does draw on things like, you know, Tacitus, right? It would be a discredit to say that it's exclusively yeah, it would be a discredit to say that it is exclusively Victorian, because Tacitus is very much to blame here. Description of the Germanic peoples and his stupid ideas regarding most everything relevant, let's be honest. He has just a whole host of very bad takes. Ow. Not really what I wanted to do, but that's okay. Flat green, probably full of moderate probability of bog monsters. Are you talking about Ireland or Denmark? Oh, wait. That also did not go lead to the thing I hoped it would. Burbo hiss. Where is it? There's clearly supposed to be one more shiny in here that I missed, and now I can't find, and that frustrates me. So I've done such a good job on the rest of the map. I've gotten like 90-something% completion. There it is. Recover some HP whenever you defeat an enemy. Well, that's handy. Found it. Anyway, right. The point of flat and green is, of course... Oh, heck. That was bad. That was stupid. Is to just emphasize that, you know, there is not some universal, inextricable link between Vikings and snow. But yeah, right, Tacitus says that, like, the Nordic peoples, have this big, noble bit of their, like, race. Something about their, like, fundamental-ness that makes them hardy and therefore, uncivilized, but physically very tough and able to go about shirtless in even the coldest of weather. And so, you know, that's a harmful idea. When Tacitus gets rediscovered, it is immediately used to say, hey, you know what you really want to do? Right, Holy Roman Emperor, you know what you really want to do? Go on crusade. And the Holy Roman Emperor is like, no? What part of this set would say I want to go on crusade? Why would I want to be like these guys? We are civilized folk now. To which the Pope responded, Well, this didn't do it. Heck. Don't have any heals left. Still don't have any heals left. Alright, well. So be it. We'll cut straight across this way, into our safe spot, and then leave that one thing to the imagination, because we have a very scary thing to do next. We have one more... Let's talk about this area, well, and then we'll do one very, very scary thing. I guess we'll go this way and we'll try and clean those two rooms first, and then we'll go up. Right, I mean, so the name of the Forbidden Domain tells you pretty much everything you need to know about it, realistically. Which is that you do not want to be here. Right, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, is... this is not a spot where you want to be. And so they're constructing that you don't want to be here-ness on in a couple of different ways. Way one is making all the enemies hit incredibly hard. Thing number two is the literal Geiger counter in the music. Right, I mean, in the lore, this is like a spot that you're just... Ow. Heck. A spot you're really not supposed to be. It has been forbidden by order of the king to go to here, and, you know, no one should want to. No one should want to go here. So we, of course, are going here chasing down the one person who came here anyway. Right, because the White Priestess in the Blight supposedly came down here anyway. And, therefore we are doing the same. Even though it is objectively a very stupid idea for us to. Oh. Well, that's what's down here. Fair enough. Fair enough. That apparently was what I was missing in here. But yeah. If the hypothesis you've heard about Tastus is that the best face doesn't know or care about the Germanic tribes that much, he's building them up to criticize some other Romans who he thinks are wimps. It's not some... Sarah sealed in the subterranean lab. Once a curious and bold man, he ventured into the blighted and forbidden domain. His blighted form was found sometime later. Non-violent and lucid. Wow. And that still wasn't everything. Okay. Fine, all spirits. I see you. Heck. I mentioned that this place really sucks. But yeah. Right, the other thing that they're doing in the... Sorry, Agilias, to respond to that first, that is absolutely correct. Tacitus knows extremely little about the Germanic tribes, in my opinion. There's quite a bit of debate, if I'm honest, that goes back and forth as to how little is very little. some people will continue, not without justification, to insist that he does know more than he lets on. And that he at least, while he is getting his sources third hand, he at least is being relatively faithful to his sources. But we have so little material from Germania in this period that, like, identifying that confidently, not an easy task. He sniped me. Heck. Heck. I died. I died. That's alright. I don't think we need to do a lot here, to be honest. Apart from actually talk about the Forbidden Domain. First thing with the Forbidden Domain, shouts to eyeballs, because there are, in fact... Ow. I whiffed. Screwed up. Threw really hard. Threw really, really hard. Threw. Wow. I got absolutely dominated. Anyway. Have I mentioned that this is not an easy fight? If you can land that, it's not bad. I'd need to do something different there. Realized my mistake as soon as I made it, but it was too late then. So, the Forbidden Domain is terrible. Look at the eyeballs. Shouts to the eyeballs in the background art. Please never be again. I want nothing to do with you. Okay, well, got through this, but in lore, this is like our spooky science domain, right? It's forbidden because it's super blighted, but also it's where bad, evil, unethical science happens, led by the heretic. And so, right, it's, again, a very fancy trope. Well, actually, this one's more of a sci-fi trope that's got imported into fantasy because there isn't a distinction between those two genres. Right, anyone who thinks there's a difference between those two genres is crazy. But yeah, right, you get this sense of this place where experimentation went horribly wrong. And as a result, you end up with, you know, these combinations of things in tubes that are being studied to be understood and or experimented with. And things that broke out of tubes and are all overgrown. They also communicate that overgrown idea through, well, fungus, right? You see a lot of mushrooms in this area because that's also part of everything. Ow. Right, overgrown things have lots of mushrooms in them. Rolled. It's just a rule. And so a lot of this is, again, trying to create the spookiest possible vibe. Really, that's the core thing that's going on. How spooky can a vibe get? And the answer is very, apparently. It sure looks like the answer is very, very. God. So, right, all the pillars that in previous things have been relatively grounded. Right, sometimes very fantastical designs, but also often relatively grounded designs. Ow. No. It's gotta be in here, right? It's right up there. Called it. Heck, I screwed up that quite badly. Alright, so we do that. Dash, jump, jump. And we grab that. All that for 5 HP. A lot of effort for 5 HP, I'll be honest. But it's worth it because I need every bit of HP I can get for right now. By the way, hello, Parisian. So yeah, I mean, there isn't a ton to say about this area, right? This is pure fantasy. This is pure fantasy in a way that is extremely familiar. Of the Poison Swamp combo. A combination Poison Swamp and, I don't know, broad nonsense? Poison Swamp broad nonsense. Hello, Selkie. We are about to do what is, I think, probably the scariest run in the game. We have a lot that is about to happen. Hangs even thicker still in the air here. This is with this is all with every HP increase, every heal, and every defense upgrade I can have. If I misplay here, I do just die. Also, this area is horrible sound. This area sounds horrible. Panic too much. Panicked too much. So, welcome to the Abyss Run. The Abyss Run is what if nothing is fun. But sadly it is required. So we're gonna be here for probably a hot second as I die repeatedly. Heck. Heal. Okay. Heal again, because I can't make that next bit without it. Potentially could have made it up there. Heal off that. Down, down. Up. Down. It's at least stressful. Oh god, I didn't realize that that was a thing. If you don't have the Heretics masks, you just literally cannot do this. Well, there's my last heal, so that I'm dead. I'm dead. All in the depths of toxic fungal hell. Exactly. What could be better? Just repeatedly throw ourselves into a doom run again into toxic fungal hell. Heal there. Down, dash. Up, up, up. Heal there. Dash, 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 dash. Not a lot clever to say here because, turns out there is nothing clever to say. There is just panic. Just a lot of panic. Because this area is in fact extremely stressful. Heal here. Dash through that, below that, through there, down, over, and down. Oh, we're not done yet. Okay. The Deathless Pact. Only high-ranking priestesses are permitted to perform the necromantic rites that entreat the souls of the dead. A warrior of the ancients must forfeit flesh and offer their soul to the priestess, in turn becoming a deathless entity. The pact is then sealed and continues down the family line through the generations until the bloodline comes to an end. The ancient warrior shall remain immortal for so long as the pact continues. Okay. And we have probably the most explicitly sacral space in the whole area. That's one of our warriors consumed by the blight. We were the last ones left alive. An undying warrior's end comes upon the death of the priestess to which they are bound. When the hour of death has come for my priestess and I. My eyes grow dim. Soon only our decaying corpses will remain. Farron, Eldred is... The battle is lost, our homeland stripped bare. What fate awaits the people who have lost everything? Hatred is the vilest blight. Unaffected by purification, it festers, running well within. Listen well, Farron, last of the undying warriors. The bond of the Deathless Pact will pass on to a new priestess. I beseech thee, carry us in your memories. Be the guardian of the last priestess of our ancient society. Rest in peace, my brother in arms. I lost the priestess that I was meant to protect long ago. I've been imprisoned here ever since. Then I met you, the carrier of her ancient bloodline. My first thought was to break the bonds of the pact. By my own hands, I would end it. But as we traveled together, I came to a realization. I was once supposed to protect the priestess of this land long ago, and I'm still meant to protect her. You are the last hope of the ancients. Together we can free the White Priestess of the Fount. I believe this to be the sole wish of the ancients, a wish and people long since consumed by the blight. So, let's look at this area. Firstly, the fact that the dominant color scheme is black, not blue like the rest of the game, just straight up black. Excellent. Top tier design work there. Big fan of it. Secondly, this is the most explicitly sacred spot, right? These, while you can't identify anything about these hooded figures, even though they're presumably priestesses, you will notice that their hands are actually open in benediction, and so are very clearly meant to be reminiscent of symbology well known to modern Christian folk. Similarly, right, we've got an explicit altar space with then a decorative something or other behind it. Right, certainly the symbol is the same as on the White Priestess's forehead, so not itself Christological, but, you know, still very reminiscent of cathedral designs. So, right, we have this little tiny chapel space at the bottom of the world that is very explicitly ancient, and very explicitly sacred. And so it's fitting here that we get the last bit of the, you know, kind of the counterpoint to what I said way earlier in the stream, of that the game is dividing arcane and divine magic. In the ancient society, right, basically the division between arcane and divine seems to be modern, right? The priestesses do one thing, the mages do another, and never the twain shall meet. In the ancient society, they're the same, and so the magical rites that Fodden is studying with the stone tablets are fundamentally something done by and for the White Priestesses. Now, chat, you can't see it very well, so let me zoom in on the stone tablet fragment. You'll see why soon enough. As it gets bigger and bigger. Nope. Come on. I believe. Bigger. There we go. Shoutouts to runes. Arachne, you said you liked the gratuitous German. Well, this is gratuitous Old Norse, but, and it looks like it doesn't actually read out to be anything. But yeah, continuing with our trend of our medieval Gothic fantasy, also having Vikings, also in standard Japanese, really in many ways fairly standard Japanese fashion, has a lot of references to Old Norse. And not just Old Norse mythology, as we've seen with some of the heroes here, right? Some of the spirits here, you know, Geirröðr, right? Even though it said Jared, this is Geirröðr, the figure from Norse myth, Ulf being a wolf, Heinir being a god from Norse myth, Sigríður being a rather standard, or one of many common Norse names, right? We see a lot of those references elsewhere in the game, and so we see that again in the last thing here. Your first exposure was a Nancy Drew video game. Well, that's a mood. I feel like I had that one. I may have had that game. I don't anymore, but I may have at some point. So. Blackmore Manor? Yeah, I definitely feel like I had that. I do not remember, though. I'll be honest. Anyway. Back to the beginning of the game, or the first area of the game, to cover it last. Lots and lots of alchemy theming. Hey, wait, that's a thing. Right, so this is something we'll probably see this summer, because, I'll be traveling a lot this summer, and so we're going to need to stick to, streams that require less internet. So one of the games I'm hoping to do this summer is to pick up Golden Sun again, and do Golden Sun The Lost Age. So we're going to see a lot of that combination too. Because alongside, you know, runes, Northern Europe, we very regularly see, especially in Japanese fantasy, alchemy be a significant force within the world. Obviously, Lots of Western media does it too. Uncharted loves its alchemy. Obviously, the Nancy Drew game is not Japanese, but is a thing Japanese media I find more commonly loves to combine runes and alchemy, despite the two traditions having literally nothing to do with each other. Grimoires and runes I can see because medieval runes were used in medieval Norse grimoires or Svartbokar. But not alchemy. Anyway, we go from one sacred space to another sacred space. You know, when I was talking about what I wanted in the royal castle with color, this stained glass is what I mean, right? Even though that color is nonsensical, right, by brightening it up instead of making those really, really subtle blues and reds and greens, by making them really bright, it gives a very different atmosphere to this sacral cathedral space. Also, this is explicitly a cathedral, and this is explicitly a cathedral with a cloister attached, so a monastic space attached to it, which is really excellent. Right, really some top-tier stuff here on the design works. I enjoy it immensely. It's just, and then we get into the underbelly behind it, where we're trying to just be sheltered away in a corner, rather than in the public access bit of the cathedral. So we get these nice dark little tunnels of stuff. Mostly stuff. Right, this was our first area of the game, this is our tutorial, and so we get this really subtle music, and really subtle work, and it all is really quite nice. I do love it. I do love it dearly. Just really... Of course, a big thing in this soundtrack, actually, is that it's overwhelmingly piano, which is great because of how emotive piano is in the present day. Obviously, it's not a medieval instrument, but who cares? The music is incredibly well done. Ow. Just don't be here anymore. Please. Hey look, it's another public bit of the cathedral space. The entire upper part connecting these two is clearly meant to be the public bit, and then down below there's a private bit. And we get just lovely depth. And look again at this stained glass. Right, doesn't match the panes, doesn't match anything, but gives a serenity to the whole place that does not exist in the royal castle. And then way back here in the back room is where we woke up. And where we woke up has a hidden door, wherein stuff happens. Restoring the Aegis Curio. The Aegis Curio, crafted long ago by the ancients, holds the power to ease the suffering of priestesses who absorb light by performing purifications. And so, we have found all 7 things. Perhaps performing the ancient spell here will unfetter the protective power of the White Priestess within your amulet. I'll decipher the stone tablet that we've pieced together. Hey look! Name another more iconic duo. Luminant Aegis Curio. Protects from the pain of purification. An amulet whose form and power were restored by Fodin's magic. The ancients crafted it long ago and dubbed it the Aegis Curio. The power it holds lessens the suffering caused by the blight during a priestess's purification ritual. With any luck, it will ease the burden purification has placed on you. And so, we have a new curio. But yes, you know, our tablet full of runes. Created in Aegis. And, right, Aegis in this case should not be understood, though it would be tempting to stick with the Norse vibe and translate it as Aegir, which is to say terror or awe. Realistically, it should be referring to the Greek mythological Aegis. I.e. the protective item. Right, pretty clearly this is supposed to be the big protective thing and not the, not a marker of the, I guess, Ægis Hjálmur, the Helm of Terror, and that tradition. Okay, we don't need those anymore, we don't need those anymore. Huh, increases damage dealt, great. Damage up, damage down, potency of healing prayer, great. Proof's done. We'll do that, and we will do that. Alright, so we have now accomplished the thing, we have gone through all of the areas. So the overall thoughts on the game as we get set up for endgame, is that really, right, there's a lot that's familiar in this game, right? A lot of tropes being used here, a lot of the same iconography, right? Butterflies being locked within mushrooms is beauty within blech. Even though mushrooms get a bad rap and are kind of pretty on their own here. But right, the green, we have this nice, bright, friendly green in amidst the eyeballs of the overwrought body horror of the Blight. And so yeah, right, really many of these things are familiar. They're pretty standard fantasy tropes, right? The ancient civilization that wrote in runes because they're ancient, and that's what ancient people did. Right, that's how you know something is old, is that it's written in runes, or it is colored brown like it's Egypt, or one of a handful of other things. We also see the familiar distraction of, what if Gothic? Right? Really, in many ways, the, entirely standard confusion known as what is Gothic. And so we see tracery and rose windows in a castle. Okay, if I set myself up in the right spot there. Close. There we go. We get, let's see, what's another big important thing we get, in this game? Oh yeah, right, we get the Victorian prison being coded as medieval because it's in a fantasy world, and fantasy worlds always draw on the medieval even when they don't draw on the medieval. Oh, I'm missing two stupid... Alright, how do I do this? Oh yeah, I forgot I had you. Guardian Sacred, go up to max. Well, I guess let's upgrade a bunch of these to level 5 instead of two of them to level 6. I guess we'll do that. I'm not gonna be able to level all of them. Blah. Well, who do I actually use then? I've used Floral Sorceress in the past. That was relatively successful. Do one more, basically. Hamlet Eldern. Maybe we'll go for the dragon. Okay. Let's try that again. Oh, hey, look. Weird random ancient script on the pillar. I missed that on the first time. Shouts to another fantasy trope, right? Something that looks vaguely like circuitry on a pillar to emphasize that this is ancient and weird. Because Magitech, and ancient society with random tech. We've seen, kind of, in the continuing of standard stuff we would expect to see, we saw the combination of... or the kind of murky separation. Ow. Between... Get over here. Honestly. Words. The murky separation between science, magic, and technology, right? Present, but not extremely obvious exactly how that works in a way that is very standard, right? Vague idea of science, or there being a scientific way to study magic, and then a non-scientific way to study magic. Oh yeah, you have another thing, don't you? 4, 5. Get over here. There we go. Hooray. And now we have... Drawing nearer now, and I've never understood more clearly. She is out there, at the end of this blighted breadcrumb trail. Oh yeah, and we've also seen a very standard thing that we see in dark fantasy, that I... have talked about before on our last stream, and that narratively, right, we have a really weird thing going on, which is that it's not that I'd say nothing happens in this story, but that pretty much everything the story is interested in is something that happened in the past. Right, the main point of the story is to discover what happened, not to necessarily enact some total new reality. Ow. Right. So, I mean, we will do that, right? I guess That's actually me misspeaking. Now that I'm thinking on it, that's actually definitely me misspeaking. This is why you don't trust me with words, chat. So, instead of enacting some new reality, the point is that we are going to enact some new reality, but it's like, oh yeah, you know, the main goal is that we understand the mistakes of the past, or some such. Right? And so, there's a lot of lore written as to create this oblique breadcrumb trail about how the past, or how the world got to this point. A path that's not necessarily clear, or, well, not necessarily is less accurate than extremely deliberately obtuse and unclear. In ways that broadly, I don't think... I am kind of tiring of this style of everything. Right. So, the statement is basically right that it is the player's job to piece together what the plot actually was, and what the chronology of everything happening is. It's like, okay, but on the one hand I really like that, because it's literally what my training is in, right? My training is literally in the piecing together of fragmentary sources. In order to say, hey, you know, this is what I think this material, both this is what happened and this is what this material probably means in this culture. Right. Here's what I think we can learn about the culture that produced these materials from the materials that were produced. It's like, okay, cool. On the one hand, we get to do that a lot in this game, just by virtue of, hey, guess what? We have written lore for you, piece it together. If you don't find it all, that's on you. Ow. Which, like, yay. But the thing I dislike about it is, of course, it only lets you ask certain questions of the material, right? You can only push so hard in asking questions that are not designed into the game. And that sounds like it should be obvious, but no, that's not always is. I want to see the sky, the magnificent blue sky. I have lost hope in ever drawing again, and yet my left hand brings hope. If I can tame it to write, maybe. Oh, to be spirited away by some kind soul. Even for just a brief respite. White Priestess's earrings. Increases the number of heals by 1. The research in the Forbidden Domain was meant to find a cure for the Priestess of the Fount, but instead they choose to carry out grotesque experiments on live human subjects. The White Priestess has no heirs, so they dare to try and create their own. The mages who carry out these experiments, the king and chief guardian who approve them, they've all gone mad. What do they mean to do with these ersatz priestesses? Will they replace the White Priestess with one of these abominations? Oh boy. Great, so I can drop that, can pick up that one. Gives me 2 more uses to do stuff. Heck. I don't even know what I would use it for, but let's do cooldown times. Now, spirits. I actually don't want this one. When in doubt, Sigrid. How long can you last in the air now? Oh, you last a long time. Alright. So, right, let me finish this thought before I enter the final boss fight, because, you know, final boss fights and all that jazz. Also, we're still not done with this room, so while I poke around, let me finish this thought. Right, the point of a historical playthrough is to highlight the influences, visible within a game's space, right? Within its design, within its writing, within the enemies you face, and all that jazz, right? And so in all aspects of gameplay and narrative and visual design, to explore what exists in this space. And yeah, it is kind of a interesting feature of a fantasy game that you really can't design all that far past, or you can't comment all much past the amount of thought that the developers put into the game. And so the places where they put a lot of effort into the lore writing, it becomes pretty clear to see that they have put in that effort. Places where they haven't put in as much effort, it's pretty easy to tell, and you can't necessarily read further into something than, hey look, this was a cool asset, right? The clearest example of that in this game has been the barbed wire. But you can't actually read into the barbed wire hardly at all. There's nothing there to read into. There's no plausible way to interpret that than just, hey look, it's something the developers thought was cool. That's alright, one solution to that might be to focus way more closely on the narrative and be like, hey, what does, you know, if we just stick to the narrative, what does that tell us? I don't like doing that because games are more than just their interactivity, right? Or, sorry, did I say narrative? I meant to say gameplay, right? You stick to the gameplay, and what does that tell us? I don't like to do that for two reasons. The first one is that games have narrative and audio and visual components to it as well. It's not just unga bunga rules. But also, I like doing it, interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, right, I like doing it, because you can do a lot, with gameplay or with visual and audio and narrative as well. But I also don't like doing it because gameplay is often not the place where historical games become historical. Like, if we use this game as an example, like, I'm hard-pressed to actually say, hey look, the gameplay has a lot of really rich historical stuff in here. Right? Because the main things we're doing, what Angus Moll would call verbs in the game, are fighting, it's platforming, and it's reading. And only one of those is really identifiable as a historical, thing with rich historical resonance in the context of this game, right? And it is very clearly the reading. Right, the fighting, this whole spear mechanic is incredibly fun, incredibly satisfying, but it's not like this is a historical take, right? There's not a history in how these fight. There's history in their designs, there's history in the different beings we are helping out, but that's all narrative work, not rules work. So the rules don't really give us anything in this case. I think that's something that's true in a lot of fantasy, right? That the rules don't... The gameplay rules may or may not have relevance to their historical claims. But having now done some nice meta thoughts and summed up why I like this game and what the point of it is, let's fight the final boss. At long last, the White Priestess of the Fount. Coming here was pointless. Flee. Be rid of this place. It's too late for me. Ow. 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 Okay, that was a stand right in the center. Phase 2? Phase 2, let's go. Oh, heck. Heck. Alright. Take one. A dismal failure. Heck, you didn't die. Alright, phase 1, check. You did not die? You didn't die. Heck. Phase 3? Phase 3? Yo, we kinda rolled. We kinda rolled. Not gonna lie. Stop. Come no further, or you too will be consumed by my blight. Ow. Well, we're not looking so healthy, I'll be honest. Chat. We're not looking so good. We're not looking so good, chat. There's a second health bar. Good lord. Okay. Okay. A couple changes. I want this to be Gerother. I want this to be Silva. I want this to be... you and you to be that? Let's try that. Oh, come on. I dodged out the way of that. 5, 1, 2. Drop again? No? Alright. Okay, that was not needlessly close. Ow. Five, 1, 2. Oh heck, that's bad. Oh, come on. I dodged that. Alright, phase 1. Or phase 1.5. Okay. Skip this, try again. Heck, oh god. Don't hit me with the nuke. Okay, thank you. Ow. Heal. Thank you. Got another one of these. Ow. What the heck is going on? Are you just giving up? Are you just giving up, Light Lord? Oh, you're just giving up. Okay. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. If you're giving up, that I can live with that. Is there a phase 3? Purify. What a cool design. I mean, very much what you'd expect. I don't think there's a lot super interesting historically to talk about, but a very emotionally resonant design, and one that I think works. It was as if I'd been in an eternal slumber, unsure if I was alive or dead. The days were filled with nothing but pain. When I awoke, I lay on a black pedestal. I felt a warm touch grace me. The tiny white priestesses were holding my hands. The same priestesses who were meant to take on my blight. From nearby, I could barely make out the voices of coven members. The blight transfer rite was about to begin. The priestesses, knowing nothing of their fate, nuzzled up to me. These children will be sacrificed to keep me alive. What was it all for? The time I spent with them was what truly saved me. If I'm to pass on a legacy to these children, let it be one of hope, not suffering. But how? How is this happening? How could one white priestess alone have such power? No, that amulet. You made it whole again? All the fragments, all the shadows of our history, the unknowable suffering. You're going to bear it all from now on? Aww. I see. You came all this way with everyone. Thank you. For freeing us all. For freeing me. You accomplished what I couldn't. You were never just a clone of myself. You're your own person, Lily. You've grown so much. It's time I should be going. I'll be watching over you. We'll always be together. And that was Ender Lilies. I'm going to not talk through this part because I have a suspicion, as usual, that the credit song is in fact copyrighted, and I will either have to mute this section or be demonetized on the VOD. So I will not try and do any rigorous analysis through that because then everyone will miss it all. Instead, let's just enjoy this.
I heard, the dreams that I lost changed nothing at all. I'm still my insufferable self, setting my hair on fire, giving you warmth, hoping you realize I want you by my side. May the lilies bloom for me. Thought I would be satisfied.
It was good to see you, Arachne. Have a good night. We'll be back with Elden Ring on Thursday, and then you may enjoy it. Forgotten City will be this time next week. We'll have a co-commentator joining us for that. This music is so good, y'all.
Should I be mad? Should I be glad? Am I enough? How can I be enough? So I'm proud of myself, reaching my goals, distracting my feelings changed. Nothing at all. I'm still my insatiable self. Isn't it better to be dumb, to be ignorant, not knowing there is liberty in this world not meant for me? May the lilies bloom for me.
Well. Well, that song was a little bit dark. It has a very... It had... Even though, you know, all the... It is done. At long last. For each a proper burial. Lily, take heart. You are not alone. The blight may have taken them, but they are still watching over us. And I will never leave your side. Amidst the collapsed world, her words echo out. Thank you for finding your way to me. So, uh, that's an interesting thing. By the way, we have a new title screen. Uh, so, the song was obviously super dark, super mournful, but also had this like music box quality to it. And then something we don't necessarily get to explore as much is right. But it's a thing games super love is right that music box tonality, the little plucked steel bars. Even though this was not a music box, it had that same sort of stilted quality to it. I wonder if there's been any research done. I don't know enough to say right exactly what the intention of that is and what the result of it is. But I wonder if there's been any research done on music boxes as tools of, I guess, gothic mourning. I don't know. Point is, good game. Right? Point is, good game. It has a lot of interesting, right, a lot of very standard tropaic stuff, but also executed really well, and that's what's important, right? Execute it well, and then there's enough interesting there from a historical perspective to be really, really neat, until it really, right, super, in many ways, very modern, very personalized story, in amidst this historical fantasy milieu. And ends up being a really good case study for us to work with and play with. So I'm glad everyone enjoyed this, those of you who stuck around. We're going to call it a night here, so let us roll over to the closing. If you enjoyed this, of course, big thanks to our patrons who make this possible. If you want to join them, head over to patreon.com/LidoHistory, and you'll be able to do so there for as little as $2 a month, and it does help a lot. But next up, next couple streams, we've got kind of 3 things coming up. We've got Elden Ring continuing on Thursday. We've got more Great Ace Attorney on Sunday, which is going to mean getting to talk about like World's Fairs and a bunch of really fun stuff in there. And then this time next week, we're going to be starting up a new playthrough where Dr. Richard Cole will be joining me for a playthrough of The Forgotten City. So, you guys have been asking for that one for a hot second, so that's going to be going on for the next 3 Tuesdays. It's something to be very, very, very excited for, because it's going to be great. But yes, I hope you all enjoyed this, and I will catch you all on Thursday, alright? Have a good night, my friends.